Hello and welcome to my channel On the Hook Crochet, where we talk about wearable crochet style. Today is no exception, and I am talking about my new Titmouse sweater that's being released this morning. It's 8 o'clock on Saturday, and I'm releasing my video to roll out the new Titmouse sweater pattern. What's different about this sweater is that it's made with fingering yarn and very small yarn, and I love the feel of the yarn. It is wool and cashmere. I wanted to point out a couple of things about the sweater. This is the video for the sweater, so I'm going to show you again. I did show this yesterday in my video, but this is what the sweater looks like. I'll turn around and let you see the back. It has several rows of mesh along the bottom, all the way around the sweater, and also on the sleeves. There's several rows of mesh on the sleeve to match. It's made from a knit crate yarn, which is called Titmouse. That's why I named it Titmouse. It's the, if you can see this right here, there's a picture of the bird, and I showed that yesterday in my video as well. It's a little bird that is found in southwest Texas or southeast Texas. And it's a sweet little bird, usually flies around the rivers and hangs out in the forest. It's like any other bird, I guess, but the colors on the bird are the same colors that are in the actual yarn. So now I see why they named it that, and it's not a mouse, it is actually a bird. This is a V-neck sweater, of course, made with fingering yarn. And what I've done here is I have decreased part of the neckline. I did not decrease all the way over. I think I did that on one of my other patterns. But on this pattern, I wanted to curve it up just a little bit around the neck. So I only decreased a few rows, and those rows will be up to you. I, in the pattern, tell you how many rows I actually used. I am a small, medium, you know, so if you're larger than that, and you have more space between your shoulder and the bottom of the neckline, you might want to adjust the decreased number of rows according to how you want it to fit, and not according to how I want it to fit. It should fit you. So if you have a lot of room here, you'll probably want to use more rows to decrease and then continue up straight. And I started right about here and crocheted straight up to the shoulder seam on each side. So, and you also want to match them, so you want to put your stitch markers in there at least where you finished decreasing, because these are decreased on every single row. You have decreases set in there, so you want to keep track of that with your stitch markers. Always use lots of stitch markers. You'll never be sorry that you did. Also on the sleeve, when you're crocheting in the sleeve, and I will answer, I have had a couple of questions about how I do the sleeves. I lay the fabric out flat, front and back, and then along the edge, the shoulder seam will be here, and you'll have a stitch marker here and here. And on this sweater, that would be here and here. The shoulder seam is here. So you will crochet between the two stitch markers, and I also mark the shoulder seam as well with the stitch marker. That way you can keep an eye on where your shoulder seam is. Sometimes I blow right past it, and some of the decreases are situated in the same line as the shoulder seam. So you'll want to put a stitch marker right up here where you start your sleeve in the shoulder seam, so you'll know where that is when you go to decrease again. You don't have to count your stitches, except I do want you to count this first row right here where you half double crochet the sleeve beginning onto the back and front fabric after the shoulder seam is sewn. The opening from the top of the arm to the armpit is your measurement. Mine is 7.5 to 8 inches. I usually leave myself that much room to put the sleeve in. We haven't sewn the side seam yet, so that's why you have to measure for your sleeve. So you want to measure from here all the way around to the other side, and that opening should be around 15 to 17 inches, depending on how big your arm is. So give it another inch or two of ease, and then put your stitch markers on the fabric that's laid out flat. If you have any questions, you can ask me in an email if you need to know, but I don't think you will. I think it's pretty clear in the directions how to crochet the sleeve onto the front and back fabric. Now, you do want to count the stitches in that first row. because you want to make it the exact same number over here as it is over here, because then your decreases are done, and then your sleeves will be exactly the same. There won't be one big sleeve and one small sleeve, because the first row is very, very important. That is a row that you count your stitches on and you write it in the pattern, and then when you go to put your other sleeve on, you mark your measurements just like you did this one, which I actually mark mine all at one time. I lay it out on the table and I can see exactly where the markings are to make sure they're exactly the same on the right sleeve and the left sleeve. Then start crocheting, and you can do that. Make sure you count your stitches though, so that when you do your other sleeve, and here's a tip that I use. Say I have 70 stitches on the first row of my sleeve on this side. I finish the sleeve and I move over here and I need to do 70 stitches. So where your shoulder seam stitch marker is, you know that you have to do 35 stitches on one side of that shoulder seam and then 35 stitches on the other side. And that helps you gauge the number of stitches that you can actually count. As you're getting close, make sure that you're approaching 35. And then when you start the other side, start at 1 and go to 35. And make sure that you fit that between the two stitch markers that you've measured out for your sleeve. I think that is probably the best tip I can give you today, because the sleeves are the only thing that can go wrong on this. If you follow my directions, you'll do just fine. This is a bottom-up sweater. The back is done in a big rectangle. The front is done in a rectangle with a neckline shaping. And that is explained in here in high detail. So you should be able to do that. And I think this is a pretty easy pattern actually. If you've made any of my others, it should be very, very easy because you know how I work. My suggestion is to read through the whole pattern. When you order it, always read through the whole pattern first. Get a cup of coffee or whatever. Just read everything in here. And this pattern is actually 13 pages long. It's in a pretty good size type, so you're not straining to see it. There are not a lot of abbreviations. The abbreviations are very simple, and I give you a list of that at the very beginning, what I'm going to use the abbreviations for, and I try to put everything in full sentences, so you're not wondering, does she mean this or does she mean that? It's very important to be clear in your patterns. Even with patterns that have lots of stitch counts and all that, if you read the patterns, sometimes they are so complicated. I have a lot of experience with crochet patterns, and a lot of patterns are so difficult to understand. Only the designer knows what she means. So I'm hoping that in my patterns you see a conversational style, and if you have a question you can always email me. Say on page 7, I don't understand row 4. I will be glad to tell you what's going on in row 4. I hope that you can read it and understand it because it's written in sentences. So that is my focus, to make sure that the sweaters fit you and that they're easy to make. So this is out on my Etsy shop now. If you want to buy it, you certainly can. Use that special discount that I sent out yesterday in the email. There's an email with a special discount that goes to the community members. And if you're a member of the community, you will have received a special discount. So if you're not a member, be sure to go down there and join up. And if you see this video and you haven't joined up and you join up and you didn't get your discount, just email me and let me know, and I'll be glad to send it to you. Okay, so I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I hope this has been informative for you, and that if you have any questions, you can email me. Please do that, or leave a comment down in the comment section below, and I'll be glad to answer it for you. So have a great weekend. I will see you again on Monday when we find out what's on the hook.